Queerness is traditional. My queerness is traditional. My queerness and my indigeneity go hand in hand. I do not separate them. These are not intersecting parts of my identity. They exist as one.
The term Two-Spirit may be new to you, but for Indigenous people, it's a queer identity that's existed for thousands of years.
Every single time people ask me, what does Two-Spirit mean? It's the question that I get the most. What's Two-Spirit anyway?
I had the same question, so we went all the way to Canada to find out.
Well, I already feel alive.
You're gonna need to watch your step because we don't want you to
Oh my
experience
gosh.
the lake.
Oh my God.
Our Two-Spirit guide is Kyron Potts.
I sometimes call myself an in-betweener, or like I'm between two worlds, between two souls.
He's a content creator.
As an Indigenous person, queerness has always existed in my culture, and with it, a certain beauty that falls outside of the gender binary that was introduced by colonization.
Podcast host.
I used to be called that a lot, like
He-Man?
no, she-man.
But you're she-man, yeah. Me too.
Like she-man, you woman.
He, she. Yeah, if I'm he, she, you're was, were.
Not to mention writer, actor, and high fashion model.
Indigenous people have always been at the forefront of art, of fashion. Even the powwow alone is a celebration of haute couture.
More importantly, he's an advocate for Indigenous youth.
This is what this is about. It's about community.
Whether you believe in Two-Spirit people or not, they're not really asking you to believe in them for them to exist. They simply just are there, and they always will be.
You've become kind of the go-to when it comes to anything Two-Spirit. Is that something you wanted or just kind of came into your life?
I make a lot of content, and I hashtag a lot of it with Two-Spirit, so if you search up Two-Spirit, good chance you'll see a picture of me or a video of me.
Kind of what happened with us here. Like,
Yeah, so I don't know if I'm like the go-to person, but I just think that in a space where there's not a lot of us creating content on such a big scale, it's kind of a natural thing that happens.
First of all, hello, my name is Kyron, and I'm a Two-Spirit person. Last week, I delivered a keynote presentation to the company TELUS, and a really great question came up. They asked me, Kyron, what is your response to folks that are skeptical about whether Two-Spirit identity is a real thing, and who are doubtful that Two-Spirit people exist? And this question really had me thinking, shouldn't the fact that I am a Two-Spirit person and I'm living and I'm breathing in front of you, my existence, shouldn't that be proof enough?
the phrase Two-Spirit is very new. It was developed in 1990, I think in Winnipeg. Is that right?
In Manitoba. It was brought to our people, and I say our peoples, Indigenous people, by a really amazing elder, Dr. Myra Laramie, who said that Creator was the one who gave her that term to bring to us. She's very adamant that she did not coin this term, but it derives from the Ojibwe word Nij Manitowoc. So Nij meaning two, Manitou meaning spirit, and Manitowoc meaning spirits. So Nij Manitowoc, two spirits. And I just think it's a really beautiful term.
I love the term.
It's really beautiful, yeah. But so, for example, like in my language, I would describe myself as like linkte, which is a word that we use in our community to describe somebody who holds that position in the community, who is male-bodied but kind of moves through the world like a woman would, which isn't a bad thing. And that word does not have a negative connotation.
Would Indigenous people around the globe use the term Two-Spirit? Is that something just for North America? Is that something you might see in Australia?
Yeah, I've met people who are from New Zealand, for example, who are Maori, who they have a word, and I'm going to butcher it, but it's something like takapupu. Yeah. That's how they call their Two-Spirit people, and they're gender fluid. Same with Hawaii, they have the Mahu people, who are third gender, who play a specific role in their community, and they're really held in high regard. And so, yeah, I would say we as Indigenous people are a global people, and we come from all walks of life, and Indigenous people exist everywhere, and that's their term to use. And I have heard people on the other side of the globe use that term proudly.
You can be Two-Spirit and gay or a lesbian. Can you define the differences between all of that?
Two-Spirit is really good at being, not a catch-all, but being sort of that umbrella term. And so within it, people are allowed to define themselves however they want. Majority of people that I know who are Two-Spirit take same-sex partners or maybe engage in ethical non-monogamy, things like that. And so these were things that were very common back in the day. And so one thing that I always like bring up is when, you know, the British colonies and all these people came over to colonize Canada, what they saw was a bunch of men with long hair and a bunch of people who were like having, you know, polygamy and like having same-sex relations, and it was like shocking to them because, you know, they came over with this religion that was so
Puritanical,
man
yeah.
and woman, and you got to do this and you got to do that, and there can't be any of this. And so they must have just been bewildered by the freedom that they were seeing, this queerness. And so that's why I always tell people, queerness is traditional. My queerness is traditional. My queerness and my indigeneity go hand in hand. I do not separate them. These are not intersecting parts of my identity. They exist as one. And that's important to me to say, because for so long, our people have been fighting colonization and living in a structure of colonization wherein they were killed and they were slaughtered because of being queer or being proud of their tradition or wearing their hair long. How many people are getting their braids cut and bullied at school? We now have a movement, Boys with Braids. This is like this big movement that's happening in Indigenous country.
And what is that? Just
It's little boys having the freedom to grow their hair long in a traditional way, because we have teachings about braids. Same reason why we braid sweetgrass. We have really strong teachings about hair and hair being a source of our strength. This is why I grew my hair out. And when my brother passed away 3 years ago, I shaved my head, because in our communities, when you have somebody that you love who passes away, to honor them and your commitment to them, you bury your hair with them.
wow, how powerful. When did you first encounter someone in your life that was Two-Spirit? Did that happen, or were you the first person?
My first sort of introduction to Two-Spirit and what that meant wasn't me identifying as it, it was actually my family identifying me as it. Because I was only 4 years old when I first heard, leave him alone, he's Two-Spirit, as I'm getting bullied by like my family members,
Okay.
my brothers and cousins, because
So
they wanted
you
to man me up, you know?
You weren't the typical boy.
No. I was in
So what were you
pashminas
like?
and scarves. I was listening to Mariah Carey, running around in heels, like typical, like every little gay boy I think has the same story of
Yes.
like, I used to wear my mom's hair and like pretend it was mine and like all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, my brothers would see this, you know, they would like throw rocks at me and trip me and push me and try to like man me up, whatever. And my auntie, bless her heart, my auntie Donna Potts, she's a very traditional woman, very strong Ifikabi woman. And she was like, leave him alone, he's Two-Spirit. She would always say that. And before I even had language to describe, before I even had any idea about sex or gender or what I liked, what I didn't like, I was 4. Like,
Right.
don't think about those things. And so I was just being. And she identified me as Two-Spirit right from the get-go.
We all know it's incredible when someone older leans in and protects you, right? They like draw the line in the sand. So
And that's the
everyone
role
knows.
of an auntie, especially in our communities.
Is it really?
Oh yeah, being an auntie in Indigenous communities is a very, like we make jokes about it, but in reality, it's a very sacred and very important role that they play in our communities. Our women are protectors. They're really, really strong people.
So when she gave you the label of Two-Spirit, did the other kids know what that meant? Did they react? Did your family, did your mom go, no, don't say that? Or was it all,
No.
like, yeah, we get that.
Us younger people didn't understand it, but my mom knew. And that was her sister, and so she just listened. And my mom was very respectful of letting me do whatever I wanted to do. She never stopped me from. In fact, she would encourage me. She would call me her little superstar. I would do spins and twirls, and she'd move the furniture aside so that I could perform. And she'd call one of our neighbors to come downstairs, and they'd have a couple of beers and just watch me perform. So I think she really fed into that spirit of me, that other spirit, I would say,
Yes.
you know? And unfortunately, I lost my mom at a really young age. My mom passed away when I was 7. And something really beautiful that my Auntie Donna told me was, you know, your mom was such a powerful feminine woman. She had all this strength within her. And when she died, that strength and that energy didn't just disappear, it went inside you. And that's that powerful second spirit that you have, that's your mom's spirit.
Wow.
And so I carry that with me, and that's why I wear turquoise and silver, because my mom always wore turquoise and silver, and I grew my hair long because I want to honor her. And femininity in my life has always been very protective and very fierce and very strong. And it has always been a source of protection and salvation for me. And so I really try to honor femininity in all of its forms, whether it's me or around me or whatever. I think that femininity needs to be nurtured.
Well, I already feel alive. If that's the point.
Just you wait. So this is, it's called the Caves, and there's a beautiful view just up over here.
I mean, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
Even frozen solid is fantastic. Just to see that open space from this height.
You're gonna need to watch your step because we don't want you to
Oh my
experience
gosh.
the lake.
Oh my god. Just like... So as we're out here, are you frustrated that there's been so much fighting over this space and, you know, colonization, and you're so vocal about those subjects? I wonder how you feel when you're out here.
Well, it feels normal to me because this is where we grew up. This is our land. This is where our ancestors come from. And for us, we know how important the land is. We know how important it is for us to go fishing and to be able to see wildlife. Like we just saw a little squirrel
I
run
saw,
by.
yeah.
And like that for us is so integral, and it's at the root of a lot of what we do as Indigenous people. But I think that a lot of non-Indigenous people don't really understand it, and they're not out here on the land as much as we are. So for them, it's like they talk about trees as if they're just like things to own and things to cut down and to use as tools and resources. But we have words in our language, like even the word asini, meaning rock. It's an animate word. Asini is like is a grandfather for us, and everything has spirit. And it sounds very like, oh, Pocahontas-y to say all that, but where do you think that those beliefs and traditions come from? They've always been with us. And so yes, it is frustrating because people don't understand that when there's no more water and there's no more, you know, nature, what are we going to do?
I just want you to explain for people who aren't familiar. There are reservations throughout Canada, throughout America, and they're broken up how?
They're broken up by nations.
Yeah.
Usually, we have what's called the Indian Act here in Canada, which was created back in 1872, 1874, well, a while back. Canada's only about 150 years old. And like, we have moccasins in my community older than Canada, you know? So like, if you think about it that way, all of these borders and these plots of land, they didn't really exist prior. And so, you know, the Canadian government, the British Crown, all of these colonies came in and created what's called the Indian Act as a way to segregate and control us as Indigenous people. And it wasn't even until the 70s that we were even able to vote in elections. And so if you think about it from that perspective, these reservations are places where a lot of the time, you know, we have this deep love for it because it's our land and it's where we come from and it's where our ancestors came from. But to know that we're being policed that way and that a lot of it is forced against us is really heartbreaking.
What was res life like? The reservation, right? You call it res life.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah,
I've heard you
reservation.
call it that, the reservation.
Just living on the res, yeah. I think that it's quite similar to the States from what I can see, but it really depends on which reserve you come from because some of them are really bougie, but a lot of them aren't. And so where I grew up in Treaty 6 territory, which is like central Alberta, plains. There's a lot of Cree people, a lot of Métis people, Stoney people, Blackfoot people. And how can I describe res life? Think of it like being on a farm with lots of animals and like dirt roads and like freedom. Like I was like 11 driving around on the res.
Right.
Like it's not uncommon to just like see kids like driving to the store when they're like children, and then you have a little note and you give it to the store clerk and it's like cigarettes, and they'll like sell you cigarettes because it's like, oh, it's for my mom, and the clerk knows the mom, of course. Like everyone knows each other, and like, it's just like growing up in a small town.
You've traveled to so many remote places to speak, which I think is incredible for you to show up and be an ally for, you know, some of these towns are just a couple hundred people, and you show up and talk to some of the Two-Spirit kids, the gay kids, the queer kids, and that must be, I imagine that is emotional for you. What are some of the things that you've seen and stories that you come away with?
Stories that make me cry. cry tears of joy and also cry tears of sadness. There's so many young people now that are starting to arm themselves with a language to describe their identities and to describe what they like and what they don't like.
Yeah.
And that's so beautiful. But with that comes a lot of intolerance and comes a lot of ignorance, and there's a lack of education surrounding gender and sex and all these things. And so when I go into some of these reserves, like I said, there's just a couple hundred people. Everybody knows everybody. And I'll come into some communities and I'll hear like a kid will come up and say like, hey, we drove 6 hours to get here because we heard that you were coming.
Wow.
And my grandma brought me because my parents don't know that I'm here. She knows I'm a lesbian. And this kid's like 13 years old. And she's like, I don't want to come out to my mom and my dad because I think that they'll fight and they might divorce. But I came with my grandma because my grandma knows that I'm a lesbian. And it's like, I always get so emotional thinking about that. I'm just like, I wish that I had somebody I could drive 6 hours to go and see who could give me even just the smallest scintilla of hope.
Yeah.
Like, that's why I'm so glad that I get to do what I do. It's like, this is life-saving work. It's life promotion. It's life celebration. I always tell people, if true Indigenous reconciliation is possible, it's going to come on the vehicle of Indigenous joy and laughter and kids being kids. That's how we know that we're surviving and we're thriving, is when our kids get to be kids and they get to live lives free of judgment and harm. I love, it's very res, which is very on point, and it's giving TwoSpirit, which I love.
Yes. I mean, it's cute, right? They did
It's
a
so
good
cute.
job.
Should we get a mocktail?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Two-Spirited Gala.
This is a big event. Why did you want to gather people in this way?
Well, we got a little bit of, we got a grant for harm reduction.
Yeah.
And I think it was really important to myself as well as many of the other people within our community that we create that safe space for everybody. And it's such an honor and a privilege to be surrounded by this many people that are part of our community and our allies. I just want to finish off by saying how much an honor and a privilege is to be in this room with so many amazing people. I look around the room and there's just so much support and love in this room. My family's here, my Tri-Community Pride group is here, and it just means the world to me. You know, this is what this is about. It's about community, and things are a little rough at times, but we will get through this.
Chicago as we film this. We're at the Newberry Library on Indigenous land, and this exhibit is called Native Pop. And I think many people don't understand how many artists and musicians and Indigenous people there are out there that have affected my day-to-day, and I might not even know it's created by someone of the Indigenous community. Is that something you love sharing and spreading the word, the gospel?
Oh, totally.
Of the Indigenous creative?
Yeah. Listen, Indigenous people have always been at the forefront of art, of fashion, of dance, of music. Think about it. Like all of our celebrations,
The
our
powwow
gatherings.
alone.
Even the powwow alone is a celebration of haute couture.
Yes, it really is.
Literally, it's like
RuPaul's Drag Race out there.
I guess in a way, yeah. But a lot of those pieces have been passed down through generations. A young person could be wearing their great-great-grandmother's regalia. And it's such intricate storytelling. All of these patterns and this beadwork that sometimes takes weeks to create. Like my partner, he's a beadworker. Some of his pieces take 40, 50 hours to make. And then people look at it and they're like, oh, that's beautiful, but they don't understand his mom taught him how to bead. And then his mom's mom taught her how to bead. And now he's beading. And that's a tradition that's being passed on. So when you're wearing this regalia and these clothing, you're not totally realizing that Indigenous people have always been pioneers with design and creating things that are beautiful and creating art. And so the world's now catching up. Oh, Indigenous people are so creative, especially with things like TikTok and social media. Indigenous people are now getting platforms.
When I was 17, my mom passed away, and I had no father to look after me. I remember we were living in Indigenous supportive housing, which was low income, and only my mom qualified for it, so we quickly lost our house. That year was really scary for me and filled with a lot of unknowns: where I would eat, where I would sleep, what I would do with my life. Things were so chaotic at that time that I developed a panic disorder. I remember one time in particular, I had a panic attack on a crowded train, and all I could do in that moment was just rock myself back and forth and self-soothe and try not to cry. There were people on the train who got up and walked away to avoid me. I remember feeling incredibly judged.
I often tell people stories are like currency. And when I tell people my story, because I'm so open online, right?
Yeah.
But when I tell people my stories, I'm gifting that to them. I'm allowing them to do whatever they want with that story. But I ask that they do it respectfully. And so those are just oral teachings that we have. It's like you actively listen. You sit and you listen. And you have to take those stories in for what they are, because they're important. And that's how we keep our culture, our tradition, our languages alive.
Yeah. Because telling stories is held so close to the community, is it often thought that you should attribute whatever story you're telling to an individual?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We have a joke. It's called, oh, that's a tobacco question.
What does that mean?
So in our culture, we have what's called protocol. And you offer protocol when you are asking for something. So for example, something like this, you guys would offer me protocol, which we can talk about later.
Okay.
You can give retroactive protocol.
And is protocol a physical thing or it's a verbal thing?
It's physical. A lot of people get protocol in the way that they want protocol. So I can't say like, oh, everyone receives this kind of protocol. But for me, it's tobacco.
Okay.
Or sistema in our language.
Are there certain things, like tobacco being one of them, or it really can be anything? Like
Yeah.
Diet Coke? I don't. Is it like a list for a green room? Like Mariah
like a
Carey
rider,
only
yeah.
wants green M&Ms. A rider, yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
Or is it a thank you? Is it kind of like a thank you?
It's a spiritual contract that you're entering. So it's really a sacred thing, and so it's customary where I come from and how I grew up to give tobacco, because tobacco is one of our sacred medicines. It's right up there with like sage and sweetgrass and fungus and cedar. They offered me tobacco when we were in Nepal. They gave that to me and said, for what you're going to be doing for us today. Do you remember when we first got there?
Yes,
they came up and gave that to me, and they
yeah.
said, "This is for you. Thank you so much for what you're doing. This is for all of your efforts and your energy that you're giving today." And so I accepted that. And now that I've accepted that protocol, I'm in a spiritual contract. It's up to me now to honor that agreement. I'm going to do the best that I can to make sure that it's worth everybody's time and that it honors that medicine. Every single time people ask me, what does Two-Spirit mean? It's the question that I get the most. What's Two-Spirit anyway? And I always struggle with answering it in a specific kind of way because my answer changes. It changes based on where I am in my knowledge. It changes based on my understanding of myself, how I'm feeling that day. But I've kind of figured it out for myself. And Two-Spirit to me is a responsibility. Two-Spirit to me is a role that I play in the community. Two-Spirit to me is a spiritual identity. Two-Spirit to me is a colonial English word that really tries hard to explain something that is so complex and exists in so many different places in the world uniquely. And it often fails to really encapsulate all of the different things that go into Two-Spirit identity. But it's the word that we have and it's the word that we're using. But I did a little bit of research, and in the Suian language, there's this word, and I love this word. It's called winkte, or wiankte. And I remember talking to Paulette Patra and her telling me this story, and I've gotten permission from her to tell this story. But it's the story about how Wakan Tanka, or the great creator Kisimantu, however you refer to him, Waka was approached by a buffalo, a tatanka in our language, buffalo. And this buffalo was really upset because his fur was all matted and dirty,
and nobody wanted this buffalo's fur, but all of the wolves and all of the other animals, they had really beautiful coats of fur, and the buffalo was angry because everywhere he'd go, he'd have to drag his fur, and all of the twigs and the mud and the sticks would all get caught up in his fur. And he just kept dragging it along, and he said, "Waka, I'm angry. Nobody wants my fur. What can I do? Please, can you help me, Waka?" And Waka said, "Okay," and came down and came to the buffalo and said, "I'm gonna help you. Here's your gift," and gifted the buffalo this big hump. Said, "Put your fur on this." So the buffalo put the fur on the hump. And then from that day on, he was able to walk around without his fur dragging on the floor, and he had a beautiful coat, and it was used for so many different things and helped the community. And the buffalo asks Waka, "What is the name of this gift that you've given me?" And Waka says, "Look at the thin layer between the outside and the inside of the hump. There's a thin layer there that's keeping it all together. That's Winkte. That's what I've given you." And so there's that idea of Winkte, of being somebody who's in the in-between. I sometimes call myself an in-betweener, or like I'm between two worlds, between two souls. And I like it there. I like that space. And I think that if we look into our communities, there's a ton of Two-Spirit people here, but if you go into any community, whether you believe in Two-Spirit people or not, they're not really asking you to believe in them for them to exist. They simply just are there. And they always will be. And you have never lived once in a world where queer people or Two-Spirit people didn't exist. And so when we look in these communities and we look at these young people and they're telling us what they are, we need to listen. We need to listen with our hearts as well, because they know better than anybody who they are. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I've had like this epiphany today, so I want to say thank you because, yes, that is the feeling.
Well, I was just really moved by what you said today with Kai, and it seems like Kai's speech really moved something in you as well. And can you just kind of explain what you were thinking?
Well, I found I've gone to a number of women's gatherings, a number of Two-Spirit gatherings, LGBTQ gatherings, and I always found hearing people's stories is always really important, and hearing their paths and how they arrived there, but we often aren't told what Two-Spirit means. And I think we know it's such a broad term, we know it's a place within community, but there's never been a definition. And no one has ever actually said what it means to be, and Kai did, and I was like, that's it. That's the answer I've been looking for.
Well, we were lucky enough to follow you to the Opaskwayak Nation, and this was something that I don't think has ever happened before there, but there was a very beautiful gathering of Two Spirits from all over the country. And what was that like for you to land in that space and be able to talk to these kids who don't have access to many Two-Spirit role models at all?
It felt triumphant to be there because I could tell that it was a long time coming and that it was very well needed and that there was pushback and that there was sort of a tension there and that Two-Spirit people really exist in spaces where there's no room for them, but they still somehow blossom. And that's totally how it felt when we went there, because all of these queer people were able to be themselves in that space and it felt so safe. So for me to be just a small part of that happening felt really, it felt correct. It felt right. And I think when a nation like Opaskwayak Cree Nation, shout out to OCN, when they call and they want something like that, you answer that call and you do it, and you do it well, and you do it with pride. And that's what all of those people were doing there by putting that gala on for those youth, and even having members of Chief and Council come and give words who are completely straight, cis, het, no idea what Two-Spirit is, but they still come and they laugh and they share stories and they pray in the language and they hug the kids. That's important. I think that we oftentimes put the responsibility of creating safe spaces on women and queer people, when in reality, allies are a part of the circle just as much, and they're desperately needed, and they need to be doing just as much, if not more, work to amplify and advocate for the voices of the marginalized. They have a moral obligation to help make the world a better place.
It was an important reminder to me that we are everywhere. In the reddest state, in the reddest town, that, you know, we say that here in America, red state, blue state. We are everywhere. It doesn't matter. Like the most conservative spot, the most conservative town, you will find queer people, you will find Two-Spirit people, and that's across the globe.
Yeah, what a great reminder going to that gala and seeing all of the fierce adults that were doing that work for those kids. I didn't have that growing up. And it's heartwarming to see progress in real time. We really are moving forward. Yeah. And so, yeah, let's just continue to do that work.
Thank you so much, not only for educating me on what it is to be Two-Spirited.
You went to the res, it was fun.
I went to the res, but also like, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And I really didn't know anything about Indigenous culture. And I think it's a call for many other people to step up and learn more, because I still have a lot of questions about Indigenous culture beyond the Two-Spirit life. And you've inspired me to explore that more. So thank you for that.
Good. I think one really great first step is just finding out where you live, finding out whose land it is, maybe learn a couple of words in their language.
Yeah.
Go hug an Indian.
Go hug an Indian.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah.